Hi, everyone. Thank you. Greetings, Sally. Thank you for joining us today. And we are going to be talking about, or the session topic is driving breakthroughs in health technology, startup strategies, and global insights. And Sally, coming from Microsoft in the startup space, I think you'd be a great person to share your perspective. But before we jump into the topic and the questions, could you just share a little bit about your background and your focus area when it comes to the startups?
Sure. And Amy, thank you, and Stan and the rest of the team for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. So I focus on helping our health and life sciences startups grow and scale using Microsoft technology. And so through that, we really focus on identifying the tools that we have, the AI offers that we have, enabling them to build the best that they can and be enterprise ready. And so we've been doing this through the industry lens for about coming up on 5 years. Prior to that, Microsoft for Startups has been around for decades. But we decided to really hone in on a few key industries: health and life sciences, retail, cybersecurity, and of course, AI. And so I've been with the company for coming up on 10 years and been in this role since we kicked off this industry focus about 5 years ago. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, welcome again, and really excited to get your perspective in the work that you're doing with these startups. And so, a couple questions. We'll kick it off with, from your perspective, what key factors differentiate health tech startups that are successful in scaling versus those that may be stalling early on?
So it's an interesting question. And I just completed, well, as of Monday, we'll complete a manuscript on my next book, which is called The Unicorn Protocol, where I've interviewed 10 unicorn founders from companies that we all know, and to really identify what are those things that lead to success. And you're probably going to think I'm going to say, well, they're really good scientists, or they're really good business developers, or they're leading clinicians. And the fact of the matter is that all of those people could be really good leaders in startups in digital health. But what I really see come through as those that are successful, they are mission first, ego is a distant second. They are learners, lifelong learners. They're coachable. And keep in mind that whether you're selling to a prospective customer or you're pitching to a prospective funder, that person that you're talking to is investing or thinking about working with the person in front of them. And so it's building that relationship, and it's building a listening ear so that you can not be the first to talk about what you're doing, but listening to what the person, the prospective customer needs, and then responding appropriately. One of the things that we think about is having what I call proxy customers as part of your journey from inception all the way through to product market fit and scaling. And what I mean by that is identifying people that you would eventually want to sell your solution to, even though you don't have anything to sell, to get their feedback, to get an understanding of how what you're building might affect workflows, might affect patient outcomes, might affect costs or revenues. And so understanding and connecting with those types of people early on, and then maintaining those connections through your journey, really help. And I've seen this with a lot of the startups that I work with personally, and many that I profile in the upcoming book.
That is really interesting insight. You really, that need to not only have a strong IQ, but the EQ is extremely important. And that listening ear, as you mentioned, reminds me of a quote that I love. I heard many years ago from Peter Diamandis, who is one of the co-founders of Singularity University. He said, "Become enamored of the problem, not the solution."
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to understand from the where's the problem coming from and who's experiencing it. You have to understand that and listen to them. So I think that's really interesting and really important, that our audience here is listening to what you're saying and sharing here.
Right.
It's really insightful.
Yeah, we've all been down that path of here's a technology, let's find a problem. And as tempting as that is, especially with all the new shiny AI tools that we have,
Yes,
it's really important to put that aside and focus on the problem you're trying to solve, why you're trying to solve it, who's going to benefit, who's willing to pay you to solve that problem. Because if no one's willing to pay, if there's not enough ROI, then you might
right.
have people go, yeah, that would be really cool, but I'm not willing to pay for it and all of that. So yeah, it's very tempting to lead
Yes.
with the technology.
Yeah, and I've seen that example of great idea. I'd love to use it, but I'm not going to pay for it. So it's a problem.
Yes.
But anyway, thanks for sharing that. I'm excited about, when your new book comes out, we'll have to be reading that. Thinking about women's health and, HITLAB, we have the Women's Health Tech Initiative. I actually chair that part of the organization. And an area that's very near and dear to my heart in light of the challenges and disparities that we have in women's health globally. From your perspective, which emerging technologies or trends in women's health are you most excited about right now?
So one of the things that started, I think, in about 1993 was actually treating women as women. So until 1993, most clinical trials did not include women. So
That's right.
for the last several, centuries or whatever, we've been treated like small men, and that doesn't work. We present differently in a variety of ways, in a variety of diagnoses. So it's important that we separate what is a traditional male care pathway from a female care pathway. So that's one. Secondly, we have spent, and this is important, and I'm not trying to minimize this, but most of the dollars and efforts up until this point have been largely around reproductive health, which is incredibly important,
Mhm.
but we are not our wombs, so to speak.
That's right.
So now looking at how organizations, startups, innovators are looking at, say, cardiac care and how it should be different for women, how we look at diabetes and some of these other hormone focused diseases, but not like reproductive hormones, serotonin, those types of things, insulin. Like, how does that manifest differently in women's bodies? And then the other thing that I think is really interesting is that there's this recognition that women typically are the glue holding the family together. And so, whether it's caring for an elderly parent or children or whatever, women are that glue in most cases. And so, having an understanding of the mental health challenges, the overwhelming feeling that we have trying to manage work and family and health and all of that, and giving women tools, whether it's mental health tools, whether it's making the process easier for diagnosing your kid with an earache. We've got a startup in our program called Wavely DX. They've got an app and an add-on to a cell phone, so you can literally test for your child's ear infection at home. Like, those things are just golden for women and for men, but understanding the unique pressures that many women feel and then catering to that in a way that helps them move through life in a much less stressful way is just fabulous and what we all need.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I agree that reproductive health, fertility is so important. It's been a big focus, but there are so many other areas, like you said, cardiovascular disease, which is the number one killer of women. 80% of people with autoimmune diseases are
Right.
women, but we don't know enough about why that is. So I think that's fantastic. And then also the example of, the app for diagnosing an ear infection in your child. I mean, the stress that goes along with knowing that your child is sick. How am I going to get them in to see the doctor and all of that when you can just go to your phone would be a huge relief, both mentally, physically, and just support the entire family unit across the board.
I
So
mean, just the time alone to set up the appointment, make sure to
yes,
get, like all those things. If you can wrap it all up with a telehealth visit, here's the reading from my phone, that's great.
Right. And not to mention the fact they've got to get to work. They've got 2 other kids,
Right. Yeah,
all this other, life getting in the way. So that's
exactly.
fantastic. That's great to hear that you're working with an organization focused on that. So before we close out, I'd like to ask you another question. Really in the going back to sort of the startup sort of logistics world, from your perspective, what makes a startup pitch stand out to you personally? Like what's going to really get your attention and your focus, especially in this very, very crowded digital health space?
So I think the number one thing is probably clarity. So if anyone's ever read the what is it, the manifesto, anyway, it's this book that I read years ago about taking the corporate speak out of your language. And what happens when we get immersed and engaged with technology is that we start talking techno speak. And so the clear value proposition that says we help these people do this with this, and the results are, that's important. And it needs to be as simple as that to start with. The other thing that I think I see a lot of is people will pitch and then they'll end it with, well, that's what we do. And it's like, well, wait a minute, like, what's the next step? Like, do you have a wedge offer? Are you asking for funding? Like, don't
What's
leave
the
it
ask?
to the person you're talking to kind of figure out what's next. Um, and then the other thing I think is really important is making sure that the market research that you've done, hopefully that you've done, is evident in what you're pitching. So if you are able to calculate ROI and share that based on a couple of clinical studies or customers or whatever, that's great. But it should be backed up with and here's how the industry is going and here's how we can help. Here are some data points about these particular problems. Um, those types of things that show not only are you really good at pitching what your concept and what your solution is, but do you understand the problem set and have taken the time? And believe me, with Copilot and all these other tools, literally you can put in a prompt and get all the research you need. So it's not even hard anymore, but a lot of people don't take that extra step. So if you
Mhm.
have a total addressable market, which I'm always a little bit struggling with that because it's always way higher than it should be, but if you're doing that and you're doing the calculation for those that you want to approach, then have some research to back it up. Like, here are 5 top targets, and here's why. Or I'm coming to you because I read your strategic, or Copilot, read your strategic plan or your annual report, and this seems to be an area that you want to innovate in, and I can help you. Like, those types of things are so critical to giving you credibility, letting the person that you're talking to know that you understand their world. And thirdly, have taken the time to understand that person's world so they already like you a little bit more because like, wow, they've really done their homework. That's a good thing.
Well, and that research is kind of like that listening aspect.
Yes,
It's like extending it in a different way. It's so important to listen and understand. Well, Sally, we packed a lot into a very short amount of time, and I would love to talk to you much, much more. And I might even be tapping into you for the Women's Health Tech Initiative because I love the way you're thinking.
great.
But thank you so much for your time, and we will definitely be in touch. And you can reach out to Sally on LinkedIn if anyone's interested in connecting. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.